possible. So just in that vein, I shall start off this section of Res Forum Live with a bit of participation that we can all join in with. And that is our first poll. We're going to bring in a poll to begin with to test the mood, to see what you all think. The poll that will come up on the screen now is really looking at the sort of short to medium term, what we think represents the likely future shape of GM programs over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, you've got a chance to put in one of four choices there. So if you put in what you think, and then we'll let it do its thing, and we'll bring it back up again as soon as it has done its thing, and as soon as you've had the chance to do it. And we'll then make a bit of a comparison with the result to see how it was when we actually did this about just over a month ago on the last Res Forum Live. So let's have a look at the result, if it's ready, or if it's not, we'll delay it for a little bit and bring it in, perhaps. There we go, there it is. Now, I can tell you, you can clearly see that the main one that's won there is that there's going to be somewhat changed model with fewer assignments, but a greater focus on a fit-for-purpose, business-driven assignments. That's come out with 78%, which is precisely the same as it was last time we did this. The only thing that's gone up slightly there is the first choice, the eventual return to broadly pre-crisis size and mix of programs, which has gone from 9 to 13%. Other, you'll be delighted to hear, has completely disappeared this time, which suggests that we are at least getting our questions better than perhaps we were before, or at least maybe you're changing your views. But let's move on and bring in our first panelists, because we're going to start off talking to our corporate leaders, and we've got with us Bill Baker from Cox Enterprises, Emery Castaneda, and David Rooney from EY. Emery is from Unilever in the Philippines. Thank you all for joining us. Before I bring you in, though, I'm going to talk to Ben Bader, who is one of the academics who does a lot of work with Res Forum. He's well known to anybody who's been involved in Res Forum in the past. And Ben, you've been doing quite a lot of research, including a report that is available on Res Forum's website at the moment called Now, Next and Beyond. And tell me, what did that report tell us about the expected changes and the greater flexibility in terms of the types of mobility that we're likely to see in the future?
Thanks, John. Yeah, welcome from Newcastle. And as I said, the report is available. So just a brief summary. So basically, looking at the beyond, one of the key things we identified is that there is going to be a decline in long-term assignments. By the time we did the survey, it was actually more than half of the companies saying that at least a moderate to a very high decrease in LTAs will be visible. They also forecast a big decrease in international business travel and short-term assignments. And not surprisingly, more than 80% of the companies responding said there's going to be a lot more virtual work. Now, what I'd be really interested in seeing how this continues is what's going to remain from this now that we are more into that. In particular, looking at virtual work, for most people I've been talking to, virtual work is mainly Zoom or MS Teams or whatever, so video conferencing. But there's actually a lot more to that, and I'd be really interested in experiencing and seeing how in the future the use of real virtual work is going to develop, because at least in terms of Zoom and video calls, I think we're seeing somewhat of a inverted U-shaped curve. So in the beginning, people just started picking up. There was a big excitement, and at some later point, it was dropping. So Zoom fatigue, people not so excited about that anymore. So I think that's going to be a change where we don't know where it's going, but it's going to be very interesting. And the other part of the question, the types of mobility. So I personally do think, and I believe the poll this time and last time reflects this, there's going to be some sort of normal normal global mobility again, but the types of assignment will change. So there's always going to be some sort of developmental assignment. You send people out in the world together, intercultural experience, leadership experience, and so on. So that may even go back to normal, maybe even increase. But technical assignments and knowledge sharing assignments, the trend is probably that these kinds of assignments will either completely vanish or at least decline in importance a lot, especially what kind of knowledge you can share within the organization across the globe using digital technologies. Has just experienced a tremendous boost, and so COVID is a catalyst in that sense.
Okay, Ben, we're already running rather over time, so I'm going to, sorry, apologies already for trying to keep people short, but David Rooney, if I can bring you up straight away now. David, I think that, one of the things that we've been hearing about a lot is of course, the amount of flexibility that people are going to be bringing into their programs as a matter of necessity. How do you see that?
Yeah, there's not a client meeting goes by without mentioning the word flexibility. So maybe 4 points and a recommendation. So I think the first point to notice is flexibility was going on before COVID. So all of us were speaking to our clients about the need for core flex policies, which was very much driven by employee experience. So we were seeing already flexibility being built into mobility types. I think where we are going to go is that we're going to see flexibility across mobility types. This is my second point. So I call these hybrid or fusion assignments. There's a lot of hype in the market about virtual assignments. I think that is a part solution, not a whole solution. I think what we're going to see is a combination of assignment plus business travel plus virtual. So for example, the assignee goes to the host country for a number of months to basically understand the scope of their role, meet their team, get started. They return home, they work virtually with the team, they business trip as necessary, and then at the end they return to the host country to close out. So that is an example of flexibility across mobility types, or a kind of hybrid approach. I'm not going to go into the detail. Everyone thinks virtual is really easy. Virtual is not really easy. Writing the policy is really easy, but there are a plethora of compliance issues attached to them.
Okay.
So flexibility across mobility. Mm-hmm.
No, thank you very much, David. I don't know if there's anything you want to add very quickly to that, or...
Yeah, I think just maybe two things. Also, flexibility in terms of scope. So we're seeing the scope of mobility teams changing. So a lot of our inquiries at the minute are really about cross-border working, people stuck in one location, even linked to talent acquisition. So the scope of mobility teams is changing. So maybe we need to rebrand away from global mobility and towards something like international cross-border advisory.
Thank you very much indeed, David. I'm going to bring in Emery Castaneda now all the way from the Philippines. Thank you. It's very late with you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for staying up so late to be with us today. And it's great to have a view from Asia. In a sense, you're a bit ahead of us, I guess, in Western Europe, the United States, and in fact, everywhere else. What sort of practical? You're the global mobility leader with Unilever in the Philippines, so a massive multinational company. What sort of things are you practically seeing? Because presumably you are putting things into practice now.
Exactly, and it's very unnerving actually, because when it all happened, it started with my region, the region I support, and in China at that, where we have a lot of assignees, but in terms of practical activities, we practically did assignee tracking, compliance management, visa, immigration for those people who were stuck in different locations. Because remember, that thing happened during the Chinese New Year celebration, and most of my assignees in the region are, on holidays in different countries. So these activities were probably the only things that we did for the months of March to May during the crisis management mode.
And how have things changed now then?
Now it's like recovery mode for us. Now that everybody has probably some of them have not returned yet, but in terms of we get a better handle on things already. We know, kind of it now that it has also, we had similar experiences in other regions. So our leadership team, my counterparts in other regions, we usually just have weekly meetings. Now we have daily stand-up meetings, and that's how we learn new things, because we haven't encountered anything like this in our lifetime. So we learn as we go. So eventually we realized that we needed to operationalize tracking of assignees using our data management tools, and true enough, eventually that data is now being used by our top level leadership teams. So we recorded people who are not at the host country, since when and with whom, if they are with their families, because there could be tax implications for those extended working in different locations, especially those not in their home country. And they could be tippings, tax residencies, especially in areas where it's very tax savvy. Probably in the COVID situation, tax authorities are very forgiving and lenient, but they will soon, I'm sure, run after those employees who are working outside, and tipping some tax residency durations. We also needed to identify immigration implications, because some of them might not be citizens of the country where they are stuck in, and they have, probably some of them have expiring visas in their host country. So good thing this is a global, well, not a good thing, but at least this is a global phenomenon. Not just tax authorities, but also immigration authorities are kind of forgiving in that aspect. And as we learn as we go, and we work from there, and now we're actually planning for the thriving mode after recovery. What do we do now?
Emery, thank you very much indeed. And our final panelist here on the corporate section is Bill Baker, who is Director of Relocation with Cox Enterprises, and joins us from what looks like a rather nice country setting in North Carolina. And I know that, Bill, you have an interesting take on what might be described as a mobility of work, don't you?
Yes, well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I work with a company that's primarily based in media communications and automotive businesses. I would say we're primarily, and have been primarily, domestic in terms of our mobility activity, but we certainly have candidates who are outside our borders. And the points that David touched on certainly, apply on both sides for us domestically as well as internationally. The 3 points that I think stood out to me are the employee value proposition. That's, I think, key for us as a company. 122-year-old company that has always focused on employees, and it continues to be the focus of the company. The people are what make us special and unique, and they are what make the businesses move and certainly make them successful. And the second part of that is flexibility of location, and then thirdly is technology. Of course, compliance presses against all of that.
And Bill, I think you had a specific example of where you saw somebody using the
For those of you, if you'll focus on John's image there, about a week ago on a Sunday morning, I had an opportunity to meet somebody here in Franklin, North Carolina. We're a community of 4,000 people. I live here and I work full time. Atlanta is about 120 miles from me, and that's where our corporate headquarters are. But I was in town and I happened to strike up a conversation with a gentleman who was on that Harley. And you'll see the 2 backpacks that are strapped to that rider, the passenger seat on his Harley. One of those 2 backpacks was his office. And I think if ever there was a good image, picture representing 1,000 words to illustrate what will be flexibility, in some ways could be the new norm once we return to work, I think that's a pretty good image. The person that I met actually works for the U.S. Department of Defense, and he is working as a contractor, but is involved in recruiting and a variety of other things. So we had an interesting conversation. I asked him about that, about his work, and as he was describing to me, and I saw the bike. That's why I took a picture of it, because it struck me as we in the current role we're in, as we return to work, whether it's on inside a country or whether it's interregion or for us interstate.